called back into, this meeting is hereby called back into order. This is the other matters agenda for the special magistrate hearing. Cases will be called in the order in which they appear on the agenda. This is a quasi-judicial hearing, which means that the formal rules of evidence do not apply. However, all testimony is taken under oath under penalty of perjury, which means everyone who wants to testify, or there's a possibility they're going to be testified, needs to be sworn in. So if you're going to testify, or you think you might testify, or there's a possibility that you might testify, would you please rise and raise your right hand? Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be truthful and accurate under penalty of perjury on the laws of the state of Florida? Please be seated. When you hear your case called, please go ahead and proceed to the podium on my right-hand side. The city will be on my left. If you're here for a fine reduction, which it appears that most of you are, the burden is on you. The obligation for you is to tell me what it is that you're asking me for and why I should grant it to you. All right, city can call the first case.
First case number 5200 Webster, CE210600247, number 5200 Webster.
Sorry. Where is?
Go ahead, officer.
Good morning, sir. How you doing? Officer Kroll, West Palm Beach Police Department.
And sir, you are?
David Jalava, homeowner.
So Officer Kroll, this is a unreasonably loud noise complaint?
That's
Citation?
correct, sir.
So why don't you tell me what this is about?
On June 14th, 2021, I responded to 509 Putnam Road. The complainant was there complaining of loud music coming from 5200 Webster Avenue. We attempted to make contact there. We were not able to. I was there for approximately 1 to 2 hours. At, I believe, 19 hours, I wrote a warning citation. Myself and my partner at the time, Officer Breyu, we paced out from the property line at 5200 Webster Avenue, and we walked down to the southwestern garage of 424 Putnam Road, and I checked it on Google Maps, and it was approximately 110 feet. The loud music could still be heard. And we also checked the property line from 5200 Webster Avenue to another complainant at 517 Putnam Road, and that was, I believe, approximately 120 feet. So approximately 1 hour and 20 minutes after I wrote the initial warning, I wrote a citation for, I believe it was $250.
I guess just no one was answering the door when you went to the door?
Correct.
And what remedy is the city seeking here?
Magistrate, it's a noise citation based on the incidents. Code mandates a warning be given first, and then after 15 minutes within a 24-hour period, a citation for $250 is issued. It also allows the person receiving the citation to appeal that within 30 days, and that's what we're here for. He's appealing the citation.
All right, sir, can you tell me your name one more time?
David Jalava.
David
Jalava. Jalava.
All right, Mr. Jalava, tell me why you're appealing the citation.
On June 14th, it was actually my birthday. I was playing music a little bit louder than I normally do because I was hanging out with some people, and I was going to go to Publix with my girlfriend to get some food and just come back to the house and just have like a low-key night. While we were out, my friend Tyrell, who's the manager of Okeechobee Prime Seafood, it's right behind Okeechobee Steakhouse, he called me and he's like, I know it's your birthday, would you like to come out to dinner? So he was going to buy me dinner. So I went out there and I totally forgot that I left the music on, and that's why I'm here, because it was a mistake. I didn't mean to leave it on. I didn't mean to annoy my neighbors. I'm actually very friendly with a lot of my neighbors. I share my fruit with them and my tools with them. And the neighbor that actually called, they have my phone number, and I don't know why they didn't call me and why they called the police first. Because I could have taken care of that so much easier. I mean, it was basically just, it was a mistake. It was a Monday night. I shouldn't have been playing music that loud, but it was an oversight because I was happy and I was going out, and I came out, and it was just after 9 o'clock when I got home, and the officer was in my driveway with the citation.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a judge in the sense that I have a great deal of discretion here. The question for me on these kinds of cases is whether or not the citation was issued according to the law. In other words, is it consistent with the code and do the facts support it? So in this particular case, even though, I mean, I'm presuming your defense here is that this was a mistake and maybe I should show you leniency. The only question for me is, did they issue this citation appropriately? And
Well, also, the speaker that's in my backyard, it's only 50 watts. And I have a fully fenced-in backyard with a privacy fence. So, I mean, if they could hear it down the street, I mean, I don't know if it echoes off a building or something, but it's not that obnoxiously loud.
I mean, I
And
can't speak to
I'm
that.
actually an audio engineer,
The
so,
officer-
I mean,
The officer testified under oath that he could hear it 120 feet away at your neighbor's house, so.
yeah, well, I can hear my neighbor's dog that lives, 3 blocks away from me in my bedroom at 2 o'clock in the morning. And I don't call the cops on them. I can hear the train that's a block away from me at 2 o'clock in the morning. I mean, it's kind of subjective to say that you could hear something. I mean, you could hear a factory car stereo is just as loud as the speaker that I have in my backyard.
Officer, let me ask you, since you were at the scene,
Yes.
did the noise that you heard, did it meet the standard of being an unreasonable loud noise under the code of the city of West Palm Beach?
I thought so, yes.
And you were there for over an hour?
We were out there for quite some time, and it was not the first time we were out there.
Okay.
And just to clarify, if I could, I believe I said the citation was written 1 hour later. It was actually 20 minutes after I wrote the warning.
The time on the citation is 9:20.
Believe it was 21:19 was the warning, and the actual citation was 21:39.
Okay, Mr. Shalov, anything else you want to tell me?
I'm sorry?
Is there anything else you'd like to tell me?
Yeah, I mean, I realize this is my first citation. I mean, it won't happen again. I mean, it was, like I said, it was like an oversight. I didn't mean to leave it on while I was gone. I didn't mean to be I didn't know I was going to be not home to turn it off. So, I mean.
Mr. Shalov, I don't believe you're a bad guy, and I do believe that this was unintentional. It's not a crime it's not a crime at all, but it's not a citation that requires intention. It's just a question of whether there was a loud noise. I'm satisfied that the city issued this properly, so I'm going to pull the citation. Thank you for coming in.
Thank you.
Number 1, other matters, 1209 North Flagler Drive, CE 12030090. Number 1, 1209 North Flagler Drive. One.
Apparently he was a
tall.
little taller.
Yeah, he was tall.
Mitch Posner, Code Enforcement. Still trying to find the right one here.
This is 1209 North Flagler Drive.
Just had to find the right paper. Case ending in 090, 1209 North Flagler. Date ordered 4/18 of 12, fine started 5/21 of 12, ran for 569 days. Total 28,450, $50 a day. Date of compliance 12/11 of 13. This is the same owner. Actually, it's a prior owner applicant. They were the owner at the time that this occurred. So they're not the current owner at the moment. They sold the property in 2013 for $830,000. Original case was work without permits. We did have contact with them back in 2012. I've got an email if needed where they asked what needed to be done. We advised them, but it didn't actually happen until December of the following year. The city's asking for 50%, 50.
Sir, can you tell me your name, please?
My name?
Yes.
Yeah,
sir.
it's Bruce Corin.
And tell me what you're asking for and why I should grant it to you.
Okay, well, I appeared with an attorney back in 2014 over this same issue. The special magistrate and the city granted a reduction of the fine, and we had 30 days to pay. And I don't know if you have the packet there?
I don't.
Okay, so we immediately, they reduced the fine to $2,500. The money was held in escrow. I sold the house in December. The approximately $28,500 was held in escrow. The special magistrate agreed to reduce it to $2,500. Tried and title sent in a check, which I have a copy of, to the city, which apparently was never cashed. I was never informed of this. Then Tried and Title, they complied right away. We had 30 days to comply. Then Tried and Title, a few months later, basically sent a letter to the city what's going on with this check because it hasn't been cashed. And this is 7 years ago. I've never been notified until I want to sell a house, a totally different house.
Are you familiar with this?
Yes, sir. They did go to a lien reduction back in 2014. It was reduced to $2,500. No payment was received. Researching this prior to us getting the application, because they were saying it was paid, the city has no record of having received the check that they say was sent or cashed the check that they say was sent. The company that sent the check was only able to provide a copy of the original check, not a canceled one. Was not able to provide any record of that check having been cashed on their end either. So the lien reverts back to the original amount because it was never paid.
Ooh,
We finance checked exhaustively because we were
I guess
trying
the
to
legal
resolve
question-
this without going through the lien reduction.
Yeah, I guess the legal question is, did they comply with the special magistrate's order by sending the check?
We don't know that a check was ever sent.
I mean, I have a copy of it right here and also a notice that was sent to the city regarding the disposition of the check and, you know,
Well,
what,
can you,
and they never got a response. But I didn't know this, so I went almost 8
Hold on a
years.
second, one second, Mr. Corn. Can you show the documents that you're holding to the code officer and to the city attorney?
Yeah, it was in the packet. All these documents were in the packet that we sent. I mean, this is a title company that has a...
Mr. Corrin, can you stand near the microphone so we can hear you?
This is a title company that has a fiduciary responsibility when they hold money in escrow to disperse the money, and nobody ever told me. I didn't find out about this until a couple of months ago when I went to sell a subsequent house. So that's almost 8 years later.
Special Magistrate, there's no objection to the documents. What I would note is I don't see anything on the documents that confirm that the check itself was sent initially. There does appear to be some type of a memo in follow-up. But again, nothing there indicates, I'm just going off the documents, Mr. Corrin, that the check was initially sent. Any cover letter, any certified mailing, anything like that.
I'm not the one that sent it. It was sent by the title company who held the money in escrow. And they subsequently refunded me the amount of the fine that they withheld, less than $2,500.
Magistrate, everything that's been described to date, since there's no record of us having received this, even on their end, this is a civil matter between him and the title company. Having not received payment, it still reverts to the original amount, which brings us to today's lien reduction.
Can I present the original order finding from the special magistrate?
You can, but I don't think there's any dispute that I think the city is conceding that there was an original magistrate order reducing this. The
Absolutely.
question, I guess, is the city's taking the position, since they didn't receive the money, that the fine returns to the original amount, which I presume is what the order says. That's typically what they say. And I'm guessing from the city's posture here that they're not willing to revisit this particular issue. Or at least they're not willing to concede that it should be reduced to this amount again.
Standards for lien reductions in 2014 were non-existent, were not written into code as they are now.
Seems like you have a dispute, sir, with your title company.
Well, yeah, and I reported them as soon as I found out to the Florida Insurance Board. And the company was subsequently sold, and I'm getting the runaround, but, I still have to come in here. I mean, I complied with everything that the city wanted me to do. And they did reduce the fine, and, nothing's changed, at least in that respect. Everything was brought into compliance. And if I had I known, I mean, the city never said, hey, you failed to not pay this, you need to pay it. I would have, try and resolved it 8 or 7 years ago. And the title company never said to me that, hey, we tried to pay the city and, we haven't heard from the city.
So what happened to the $2,500?
That I have no idea. I mean, I never knew that it was, I was under the impression that it was paid.
But you never received it back at any point?
No, absolutely not.
Let me see the original order from the magistrate. Posner, my problem here is one of equities, which is generally how we do these things. If I presume, for argument's sake, that the respondent is not lying to me, that he did indeed make this intention and he never received his $2,500 back, so we had no reason to believe that it wasn't paid at closing, which is not atypical about how these things are done.
I'm not sure what you're asking me.
I guess I'm asking, why should I apply a different standard today than the one that was applied by Magistrate Ashton when she did this?
Because the lien reduction is being heard today for what is still currently a legal lien, and that's the standard now. What you decide ultimately, I can't comment on.
Well, you can, but
Not on the record, sir.
yeah. Mr. Corn, what I'm going to do in this case, I'm going to presume that what you're telling me is true, that this was intended to be paid, that the error was not one of your direction, And I'll reduce this to $2,500 pending the 30 days. So I'll give you another bite at this apple. I can't get you your $2,500 back, so that's up to you and the title company, but I'll reduce it to the $2,500 for 30 days.
Okay, thank you. So what do I need to do?
You need to do what you were trying to do here. Pay the city $2,500 before 30 days expires.
The instructions are on the order, sir.
Oh, okay, all right, that's fine. Are we finished?
Yep.
We are.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next case, number 2504 51st Street, CE 121-00300.
Case ending in 300-504 51st Street, date order 12/18 of 13, fine started 1/2 of 14, ran for 2,618 days, total is $523,600. Daily fine was $200 a day, date of compliance 3/4 of 21. This is the same owner. Case history is 5 cases on the property under their ownership, currently on sale for $420,000. The original case is fence without a permit. Mitigating circumstances given is that it's the city's fault. I understand he's going to present a lot of information as to how it's the city's fault with the permitting. We have Robert Brown here from the building division to explain which parts seem inaccurate on our end. Normally, this is a 30% ask. The city is asking for 5% based on the size of the lane. Oh, no sheet. I think so.
So if my math is good, the city's asking for 26, is that it?
Say that again, sir?
The city's asking for 5%, which is about 26,000 roughly.
Yes, sir.
Sir, can you tell me your name, what you're asking me for, and why I should grant it to you?
Yes, Roman Courier, owner of 504 51st Street. I'm asking that the board, the magistrate, lift the lien in completion, and I can provide you with some documentation and explain to you why, if I may. Everything I have here has already been submitted to the city, which I suspect is why they have some thoughts on my evidence. May I approach?
Are these documents ones that you've already seen?
What's in the application?
Yeah.
Mr. Courier, were you sworn in?
Yeah, I was.
Okay, very good, thank you.
I was sworn in. If I may, I purchased this home in 2003. I had done extensive renovations to the home, and as you can see as Exhibit A, these are all the permits that I had pulled to do this extensive renovation. It was additions, it was remodeling work, it was electrical work. I had permits pulled to do the driveway, I had permits pulled to do the irrigation work. In 2012, there was a storm that caused some damage to the east side of the fence on the property, and I went and pulled a permit to have the fence fixed. And in doing so, I went down to the city, I filled out the application, and mind you, I'm a first-time homeowner here, so this is the first time I physically was doing this work myself, but I filled out the application, I submitted to the lady at the desk, she told me she needed a survey. I went and picked up a survey, and I highlighted it, and if you look at Exhibit B, it shows that this is the permit that was submitted, and attached to the permit was the survey that I had submitted as well. And in the survey, she asked me to highlight where the work was being done, and the highlight you see on the survey here is the highlight that was included in the application. The lady then asked for the specs for the materials that I was going to use to repair the fence. So I had to go down to Home Depot, pick up the specs for the hurricane specs for the vinyl shutters that were or vinyl fencing that was being put up in place of the wood fencing. She then submitted the application to the historic board. Historic board said we can't approve the vinyl fencing. I explained to them that 3 other homes just on my side of this block also have the vinyl fencing. They said, we can't approve it. So I went to the city commission, asked them for approval. Exhibit C is my application to the city. I didn't include all the exhibits because they were unnecessary. The city granted my request to use the vinyl fencing. You can see that as part of Exhibit D, where it shows the approved upon appeal per the city commission. Also, if you go back to the application, you'll see on the survey, it was written directly into the survey that I'm allowed to replace the materials with vinyl siding, with vinyl material. They also note on here that I have to make sure it doesn't go above 6 feet, and it can't be, the gates can't be more than, can't be closer to the street than 25 feet away. So they have to be at least 25 feet away. No question that all of that was complied with. The elderly lady who owned the home immediately east of me sold the house in mid-2013, at which point in time she had pulled a survey as part of her purchase of it, notified the city that the fence was encroaching on her property. And as it turns out, it appears there are no permits prior to this for any fencing in this area. So every home has fencing around it, and I checked and nobody had pulled permits for any of the fencing, so it was unclear, and this is all after the fact, but it was unclear who put the initial fence up. But it appears the fence was initially put up by the homeowners for the 551st Street decades ago. So at the same time all this is going on, I'm out of town because I have some personal crises going on in California. I come back, and the city, in the meantime, the city has notified the new owner, go ahead and pull a permit for the fence on your property, and we'll comply the violation that's reflected on the 504 51st Street. And if you look at Exhibit E, you can see where it shows that was the comment to the homeowner. They say, once you get a permit issued for the fence, the violation issued for 504 51st Street can be, quote, complied. She doesn't pull the permit. She can't pull the permit because she's going to have to do what I did, which is apply for the permit, go to Historic Board, get denied by the Historic Board, go to the City Commission, try to get approval from the City Commission. So she says she can't get the permit. On October 29th, they issue a notice of violation, which is Exhibit F in your materials. And in the notice of violation, what they state is installation of a vinyl fence without a permit and installed on the wrong side of the property line. Notice they don't have any complaints about the gates at this point in time, which is going to become important for your honor. I'm out of town when this comes in. I ultimately make it to a hearing before a magistrate sometime in December. And at that hearing, the magistrate states, and this is Exhibit G. The ruling from the magistrate is it is the order of the special magistrate that the owner shall either apply for the correct permit or take down fence by January 1, 2014, or the city will impose a fine. On December 21st, before I had to fly out of town again, I had two gentlemen come over, take down the entire fence, stack it up neatly in the carport, and it was done. So I had complied with the magistrate's order on December 21st of 2013. In late January, they issue a non-compliance. I think I received it the first week of February. And I called them up and said, look, I got this notice about non-compliance, but I did comply. I complied back in December. They're like, well, in order for you to comply, you have to have a call for an inspection and have them come out. I was like, well, have them come out. It's the fence. They can just drive by and see that there's no fence there. They said, before we can do that, you have to pull another permit and then schedule a specific inspection. So in Exhibit H, you'll see, is the other permit that I pull. So I had to go back down to the city, fill out another permit application, obtain another permit, and this permit you can see says, final inspection only for fence on east side of property for expired permit 121, which is the original permit. I have them come down, they do the inspection on the 12th, confirm that the fence is torn down. They make a note that the gates are still there, but if you see, there's no comment about gates being part of the violation, neither from the city's notice of violation or from the special magistrate. So 7 years, I never hear another thing about it, just like the last gentleman. 7 years later, I'm trying to sell the home, and just before closing, we get to notice that there's a lien for the property. I said, no, that has to be a mistake. And we went through the whole hoops, and they're like, no, it's not a mistake. So we sent all the paperwork to the inspector, Mr. Conrad, who reviewed it and looked at it, and this is Exhibit I. So Exhibit I, Mr. Conrad reviews the materials, recognizes that we were permitted to use vinyl material for the gates as well as the side fence. And he says, upon further review, the approval of the final inspection, the fence permit is now closed. I apologize for any inconvenience. Thank you. We then reach out to the city and say, look, you know, I'm going to lose this buyer. Can you get this lien lifted so we can go forward with the closing? The city's response was, no, you didn't comply because you didn't take down the gates. And I said, well, there's nothing in here that requires me to take down the gates. Their response is, well, you never pulled a permit to install the gates. I said, well, the permit's right here. You can see the permit. The city's response is, no. That permit application says repair fence. It doesn't say install new fence. So I explained to him, I said, no, there's only one form. There's not an install permit form and then a separate repair form. There's nothing to explain the difference. There's just this, and there's no doubt that the fence had gotten knocked down. There's no dispute that I was fixing the fence. The question that they have is that when you replaced the wood material with the vinyl material, that qualifies as an install and not a repair. Therefore, because you said install or repair instead of install, this isn't a valid permit. But my problem with that is they reviewed this application. They saw the survey. They knew exactly what I was doing. They knew I was removing the wood to put the vinyl up, and they said, first you have to provide me with a survey to show me where the vinyl's going. Then they said you have to go get the specs from Home Depot to show me that the new material you're using is meeting the hurricane requirements. Then they sent me to historic department because they said this material isn't approved by us. You have to get approval from historic. Historic said, no, you can't use this material as part of the repair of this fence. And I went to the city commission. The city commission says, yes, you can use this material for part of this permit. They note on the permit, the very permit on the survey where it says approved per city commission. So this permit specifically says that I can use vinyl material to install this fence. So when I removed the fence along the eastern side and left the two gates because it wasn't part of the notice from the city and the gates weren't part of the order from the magistrate, the city's position is that I still wasn't in compliance because the gates weren't in compliance because I should have had a permit that said install, not a permit that said repair. And as a result of that, here I am, 7 years later. I lost the sale on the house. I've been carrying the house. And my position is I complied with the magistrate's order, which is everything that we're dealing with today, on December 21st. This violation should have never been issued, and I am asking you today to lift the lien in whole.
It's a building division case. Our chief building official will respond.
Hello, Robert Brown, building official. So I got involved with this case when Mr. Roman sent his correspondence into the city, so I'm not the inspector who was out there. But the initial permit application was for repairing a fence on the east side of the property. We found that fence was actually on the neighbor's property, and the neighbor was complaining about it being on her property. I'm not sure whether she did attempt to get a permit for that fence. Mr. Roman is saying that she couldn't get a permit. I have no facts to determine that at all. What I do know is that she obtained a permit for a chain link fence, and she obtained it within 1 day. So she was able to obtain a fence permit for the fence she wanted to install, and she got it in 1 day. She put her fence on her property. Mr. Roman's fence was on her property. He has no right to have a fence on her property. His permit description for repairing a fence is exactly that, repairing a fence. Not installing a fence, not fence and gates. We have only to go by the documents that he submits And when he changes what he wants to do, he needs to inform the city that he's changing the scope of his permit. So he didn't end up repairing the fence, he ended up putting up a fence and also installing gates. I have no objection to the lien reduction because at this point, the fence has been removed, so the violation has been resolved. So I have no objection to that. To my mind, it has served its purpose, the lien, but Mr. Courier is objecting to, I guess, the amount of the lien. So I think that's what we're here to discuss, is what would the lien reduction result in?
I guess, so here's my confusion. So the reason this fine ran for so long was because of the gates?
Well, the gates are unpermitted, so we didn't have documentation to show that the gates were part of the permit application. The description on the second permit said that it was a permit, final inspection only, for fence on the east side of the property for expired permit, and gives the original permit number. So all that inspection can do is we can perform an inspection for the scope of work stated on the original permit, which was not for gates, and also didn't authorize anything to be on the neighbor's property. So the fence on the neighbor's property is something that she's objecting to, so we have to make sure that her objection is heard.
So he's telling me that he removed the vinyl fence from her property in I guess, December of that year, right? But the city found that it was still a violation. The reason it was still a violation was because the gates were not removed?
Yeah, it's unpermitted work, yes.
Were the gates not part of the original permit that allowed him to do that? I mean, presumably, right, if that fence had not been on his neighbor's property, would the gates have been properly part of that permit?
Well, not when the description says repairing fence. So if you're describing installing gates, then you'll say on the permit application that you're installing.
So no matter
gates.
where that fence was being built, those gates were always going to be a problem?
Unless there was a permit for
Unless there was a
installing
permit
gates.
particularly for the gates?
Correct, yes. Well,
Just to
it could have been
provide
included with the
clarification.
fence permit. So you can have a fence permit to include installing gates, but the fence
But you're
permit,
saying this permit did not?
this permit is for repairing a fence.
If I may,
Yeah.
I'll take you to Exhibit B. If you look at the description, it specifically says, quote, repairing fence on east side of property and gates. It's highlighted on the survey. It was clear what was being done, and there was no dispute of it at this point in time.
So you're repairing a fence and repairing gates.
If there was a violation, if they thought the gates were a violation, that should have been part of the October 2013 notice that was sent to me, and it should have been addressed by the magistrate at the December hearing we went to. But there was no discussion of the gates, and I don't think the city's revisionist history is really fair, because if you look at Exhibit E, this was from Mr. Brown himself. He says, so long as you homeowner over there on 551st Street, as long as you pull a permit for that fence, then 504 will be complied. So he understood back in October the gates weren't an issue. For him, it was only concerned about the fence on her property. But here we are 7 years later, and now the gates are suddenly, for the first time ever, an issue with the permit. But it specifically says, expressly says, gates when I applied for that permit, and that was approved by the city.
It expressly says repairing, not installing.
There's no dispute that there were gates there when I bought the house, and that I had replaced the gates. Now, the posts all remain, because there's all these posts that hold up the fencing and the gates. Those all remains. I just changed the material where the gates were. I went from the wood ones that weren't durable and weren't holding up to the vinyl, and I went through every hoop imaginable to get the approval to do that. The whole debate here, the reason I lost the sale of this home is because this generalized application says for a fence permit, doesn't say whether it's a repair or install, and the city's interpreting my work as new installation, so I should have used the word install instead of used the word repair. But they knew when I filed this application that I was installing the vinyl material. So if they didn't agree with me installing the vinyl material and they wanted it worded differently, they had to do that in 2012 when I submitted the application, not 8 years later after they're trying to fine me $523,000 for a fine I never knew was running.
Were there gates where there currently are gates in the fence that you were repairing?
Yes, there were gates. There were always gates there.
So what did you actually do? Did you tear out the old gates and put in new gates?
I took off the wood gates, and when you buy the vinyl, they come with these sleeves that go over the wooden posts. So you just slide the sleeves over it and tack the new gate onto the sleeve. But the posts are the same wooden 4x4 posts in the ground.
So in the city's view, is that repairing or installing?
That's installing. The permit description in box 4 says project fence repair. In box 5, further description, repairing fence on east side of property and gates. So it's all about repair. The neighbor has complained that there was encroachment, and I was telling her that she can obtain a permit for anything that's on her property. It doesn't matter to me who put it there. If she wants to get a permit for it, she can get a permit and help her neighbor to get his case complied. I don't know that she ever attempted to do that. What she did was obtain a permit for a chain link fence, which is probably somewhere else on her property. She got that permit in 1 day, which is not atypical for a fence permit, which is legitimately submitted.
Ms. Wofford applied for that after I removed my fence in 2014. That has absolutely nothing to do with today. And the most important thing for today is that the magistrate order only states that I'm required to remove the fence. If the city wanted me to have to remove the gates as well, then they should have said so in the notice of violation and the magistrate could have addressed it. But they didn't, she didn't, and I've never removed the gates because no one's ever noticed me that the gates were some kind of problems, even though, in my opinion, the permit expressly addresses it, and the city approved it. Knowing that I was changing the wood material to a vinyl, they approved this permit.
It's not reasonable to assume that the gates are part of the fence.
No, if the fence is one item, and like Mr. Brown just said here, he understood that the application only said fence. He didn't realize it also said gate. So when I pointed out here now, he just told you that, well, no, it was just for fence. It didn't include gates. So now that I point out that it includes gates, the whole focus of it is, well, it was the word repair instead of the word install, which is so hyper-technical, especially for a homeowner who's never pulled one before. The city has individuals there who are approving these things. They're going to look for it. If they know I'm asking to replace wood material with vinyl material, and they see the word repair, knowing there's a fence there and I'm changing out the material from wood to vinyl, they're going to say, if that's not acceptable, no, you're not doing a repair, it has to be an install. They knew exactly what I was doing. It's all documented. It couldn't be more clear. The survey shows it.
Let me ask the city official this. So when he repaired the previous fence by taking the wood off and putting the vinyl on, is that not akin to what they did with the gates, taking the wood off and putting the vinyl on? What's the difference? What makes it a repair versus an installation?
So a repair is when you're replacing parts of any structure. So you can repair parts of, you can mend parts of. So taking down, the description says repair of the fence, repair of the gates. Now when the neighbor is complaining to me that this is on her property, I'm going to address that with her. That's how I got involved. The whole process that Mr. Courier is referring to, this is a zoning review process. So it comes through my staff to process it for zoning. If it goes to historic and he has to go to the Historic Preservation Board, that's not something my staff is aware of. We don't deal with that. If it goes to commission to get that approval, again, that's something that is not something that my staff are going to be intimately familiar with. He's intimately familiar with what he's doing with his fence. 1,000 permits a month doesn't give us the opportunity to be intimately familiar with what he's doing with his fence. So the onus is on him to describe the work adequately that we know what's going on. And if it says repair of a fence, We're going to take it to be repair of the materials on that fence. When we go out there and we see a gate in vinyl material that was not part of the original fence, that's a new installation. So he now has unpermitted work. And I brought up the neighbor's fence permit only because Mr. Courier is saying that somehow his neighbor attempted to get a permit for that fence that was encroaching on her property and was unable to do so. I don't have any knowledge of that. What I do have knowledge of was what she was telling me, and that she was able to get a fence permit for her chain link fence. Again, I have no objection to the lien reduction. That's not what I'm here to do, is to object to the lien reduction. I'm fine with him getting the lien reduction. So I think what we're talking about is the amount of the lien reduction.
Yeah, I'm just trying to balance the equities, because the argument from the property owner is that this shouldn't be a violation. I just want to get the city's understanding is that this definitely should be a violation.
Yes, he had a permit to repair a fence, and he's replaced parts of the fence and changed the material. He's not repairing it like for like. That's what a repair is, like for like. This is not like for like. That's why he had to go to the Historic Preservation Board, because it wasn't like for like. It's a different material.
On that point, two things. That's inconsistent with Mr. Robert Brown's email from October 2013, where he says, as long as she pulls the permit to cover the fence, the 504 will be complied. That's Exhibit E. And it's also inconsistent with the fact that if you look at the notice of violation, it specifically only references fence. It doesn't say anything about the gates not being properly permitted. And if you look at H, the order from the city, or this is G actually, G's to this order from the magistrate, she's only telling me to take down the fence. She's not telling me that the gates are somehow a violation. So they can't now hold 7 years later that work that was done on the property that's not reflected on the magistrate's order is a permissible violation.
I'm not sure I agree with that assessment, though. As I read the order, essentially she's saying, get the right permit or take what you did down. And you made changes to the gates. I don't find it as an illogical reading of this order to say that somehow you did repair work on the fence and gates, but the only thing you're supposed to take down is the fence. You know, it's separate from the gates. I mean, you treated them the same in the application, essentially, that you're doing this work to replace the gates and fence. I don't know.
I set them out separately, though. I mean, and I think Mr. Brown understood that as well. He just said if I had wanted to replace the gates, I should have applied for a permit that said I was doing that with the gates. So then I pointed out that the permit
I think what he was saying was that if you were going to do the type of replacement that you did in that permit where you were talking about the fence and the gates, you should have been a little more explicit, I think was his argument. But
and maybe I could have. I was a first-time homeowner at the time, doing my first application, and that's why you go to the city and you sit down, and they will tell you, because they are the ones that wanted the survey, they're the ones that wanted the materials verification to make sure that the new materials that I'm using are going to meet the specs for the city. And despite telling them that, look, I'm using this material, they're like, okay, we see it, everything's fine, application approved, here's your permit. If their position was, no, if you're using new material, you can't have a piece of paper that says, repairing fence and gates, you have to reword this and say install. That'd be wholly unfair to ask a homeowner to understand their little technicalities of install versus repair. That would be something they would have done before authorizing the permit to be completed, which specifically says the material is being changed out. And that's what the whole fight was over. Having to go to the historic board and having to go to the city commission was because we were changing the material. They knew we were changing the material out, and if they didn't think that the repair language was acceptable when I was changing out the material, their time to object to it was in October of 2012 when I was applying for this permit. That's when they say, no, the scope of work that you're asking to do doesn't fit with your description, so we're going to deny this, and you can resubmit it with the proper language. But they never did that. They approved it.
must have been quite a shock to see the size of the fine on this property, huh?
It was, and it was, not only was it a shock, but I've taken great care of this property. I mean, people thought it was a tear down, and I've completely remodeled it. Everything in that house is new. New roof, new addition on the back, specialized driveway. I even pulled a permit to replace the envelope from the road to the sidewalk. Every detail of the house was done to the, best I could possibly do it. Specialized doors, impact glass, everything in that house was done high end. And then, have someone try to hit me with a fine for 150% of the value of the home. Yeah, it's shocking.
All right, so this is what I think. I'm neither a building official nor am I the homeowner that pulled these permits, but I'm trying to find the equities here. I think you have some good arguments about the scope and certainly the difficulty you had here. I don't dismiss the city's claims, though, associated with the gates. I don't think that's unreasonable, their point of view, that the installation of the gates constituted something that you didn't describe in the permits and never correctly addressed. But I don't think it warrants the size of this fine. The city's certainly, I guess the city's largely in agreement, since they offered to reduce the fine to $26,000 from $523,000. I still think that that's high considering the equities of the situation. I'm going to reduce this thing to $5,000 payable within 30 days.
Thank you.
Mr. Carrier, here's a copy of your order. Number 3, 4121 Heath Circle South, CE 200300300.
Go ahead.
Case ending in 3004121 Heath Circle South, date order 11/4 of 20, fine started 12/5 of 20, ran for 83 days, total $4,150. $50 a day, date of compliance 2/26 of 21. This is the same owner, 3 cases under their ownership. Mitigating circumstances is it was the contractor's fault, which is certainly not something the city is going to dispute, but ultimately that's still the owner's responsibility. City's asking for 30%.
City's asking for like $1,200, is that right?
I'm sorry?
$1,200, is that it? Well, it is mental math. All right, so the city's asking for $1,345, and you are?
Hello, Kia Allen, homeowner.
All right, so what are you asking me for, Ms. Allen, and why should I grant it?
So I'm asking for this to be reduced in total. I had an air conditioner put in 4 years ago by a contractor. Apparently a permit was not pulled. I was not aware of it. Received a notice of March of 2020 regarding this. I contacted the contractor who gave me the runaround. Told me it was a mistake. He was fixing it. Again, this was also the beginning of COVID times, so he blamed everything that the city was closed and all these other back and forths we had. Finally, I received, or I got a call or a hold of Dan, who was, I guess, the person who came out and initially put the enforcement on there. And I had him to call the contractor. And I'm not quite sure what he said to him, but eventually he filed the permit. Because I was getting so frustrated, I wanted to file the permit myself. I was told I can't, because this is an air condition, again, 4 years before that, that I didn't have any control over it.
How long was this out of compliance?
83 days. The case was first opened in June, didn't go to hearing until November, so the building official did try to let this go and get it done before it even went to a hearing. Clearly, she had issues with the contractor. Again, the city doesn't dispute that.
Right, and Dan was very helpful, like I said, in trying to speak with him. When it came up before the magistrate before, he told me I didn't need to come here to speak, that, that we would have time to find, and he believed that the contractor will apply for the permit. Well, then I'm told later that I should have come and I should have, spoken up. But my also biggest issue is that the permit was filed and paid for in November, which is what the initial magistrate on November 4th said you had 30 days to pay for it. Finally got the contractor to do it, we paid for it. But then it sat on the city's desk until I called in March of 2021 to say, hey, I haven't heard anything. And the lady says, oh, it's been paid for. All that the contractor needed to do was to tell the city that they had paid for it, and they would have issued the permit, and someone would have came out and inspected. And I said, well, how was I supposed to know that the contractor never told me? Of course, he doesn't want to talk to me right now because I'm pissed off at him for having even go through this process. Well, it was paid for in November, which is within the 30 days that the city gave. And because it sat on the city's desk until I called and they issued me the permit, I sent the lady my email address. She gave it to me. The very next day, she sent someone out to inspect. It passed the inspection. But I'm being fined from that time it sat with the city.
When was the permit ready to be picked up?
I'm not going to dispute her date. I'm sure that's accurate, but it's not issued until it's picked up. I mean, they may have paid for it. I don't know, but again, that's going to be on the contractor. The city said, hey, come pick up the permit. They never picked it up. It hasn't been issued yet, and the magistrate's order was included inspections.
Why does the city want 30% here?
Standard ask when it's the same owner that caused the violation.
What other violation did I have?
For this case, it's just the AC.
Oh, I thought you said it was other violations. That's what I was.
No, he's just saying
There
that
were
that's their standard ask.
3 total cases for
Oh, okay.
under ownership, but that's
How many
one of them.
cases, were there any other cases under the ownership?
3.
What are those cases? That's where I'm like, what are you talking about?
Monique, can you bring up the main screen for violations?
I think you might be, are you referring to a garbage can?
While she's doing that, I'll tell you, one of the things I'm supposed to judge in these is if there are previous violations on the property.
Right.
So that's why he's calling these up, because that's supposed to, obviously if there are none, I'm supposed to take that into account. And
Right.
if there are some, I'm supposed to, obviously weight that.
Understandable. I guess my biggest issue, like I said, is that it's sat on the city's desk, and I'm being fined because of the contractor. I can't see.
Special
that.
Magistrate, can I just give you the 2 comments that I see in our system? This is the permit system. 12/18/20, reviews complete. This is in regards to replacement of windows to impact resistant. Is that the one we're talking about?
That must have been before me because I haven't replaced
No,
windows.
this is just an AC.
I see. Okay. Let me go back and find the other one. I apologize.
The other 2 cases were for trash cans stored in view and the driveway needed to be pressure washed. Both were
Which-
complied without any issue.
Exactly.
Well, I can't reduce it to 0 because the city did have to go out and enforce this, and I realize that this is driven largely by your contractor, but under the law, the homeowner is ultimately responsible for the permitting, not the contractor. But I'm not going to reduce it to 0, but make me a reasonable offer.
This is hard times. $100. Like that's.
I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll do 150 with your commitment that you won't be back here, that you're going to keep your property up to code, and make sure that you stay within the city's guidelines. All right?
Definitely. Thank you.
Magistrate,
Yep.
how long?
Oh, 30 days? Is that enough time for you?
Yes, that's fine.
All right.
Number 4, 835 Flamingo Drive, CE 20060234.
Case ending in 234, 835 Flamingo Drive, date ordered 9/2 of 20, fine started 11/2 of 20, 46 days it ran. Total $4,600, $100 a day, date of compliance 12/18 of 20. Same owner, 4 cases under their ownership. City's asking for 30%.
All right, can you tell me your names, please?
Good afternoon, Magistrate. My name is Amel Belkamsa. This is my husband, Matthew Kuzdab. We're the owners of the house.
You have to slow down just a little bit and speak into the mic.
So my name is Amel Belkamsa. This is my husband, Matthew Kuzdab. We're both the owners of the house.
Okay, so what are you asking me for, and why should I grant it?
So we are asking for full rededuction. We actually live in Canada. We flew in from Canada yesterday to be here in person. The story is that we purchased the house as a vacation property in April 2019 for our family. It also serves as a rental, and we also have all city permitting required to rent it. In September of last year, a neighbor came to the city and complained that we had installed windows without permit, which I guess it was an ill-intentioned neighbor because it was not the case. We purchased the house with the windows that were in it. Any inspector that would have seen the house would see that the windows were at least 10 years old. They were very, very old windows. The reality is that the windows, I guess, were not to today's code, and after the neighbors complained to the city asked us to replace the windows to code. So we obviously went back to the title company and the previous owners, but because there was no lien associated to the house with the previous owners, this was something they could not have found in the research while we purchased the house. So even if really this is not arised from any kind of violation on our own, we took it upon ourselves to go and engage into the replacement of the windows. We had a Zoom meeting hearing with the city back in September, whereas the magistrate gave us 60 days to proceed with the replacement of the windows. We immediately engaged into the work to replace the windows, finding a contractor, all of that remote, obviously because of the pandemic situation, not being able to come here. We found a contractor. There was quite a bit of delay associated with speccing the windows because it's a historic district. The city has been very helpful. Mr. Posner, Mr. Conrad, I think we went through everybody in the city. Up until the beginning of December, our permit was approved to replace the windows. At that time, between the holidays and the supply chain issues because of the pandemic, it took a while before the windows arrived. We proceeded with the replacement of the windows. When the windows were replaced, some structural issues were found around the windows. When the inspector from the city came, requested that we reframe those windows. We engaged into that work as well, finding a carpenter, reframing the windows. It pretty much, we also had to find an engineer in order to be able to comply with the framing permit. All of that, in essence, took us up until beginning of April. We did not lose a second in order to comply with the requirement. Even if none of this was induced by ourselves, we never proceeded with anything that resulted in a violation. It just took way longer than the 60 days that the magistrate had given us. There was a fine of $100 a day post the 60 days. We were very concerned with that because the replacement of these windows was a complete surprise to our family, a huge financial burden. It was more or less costing us $50,000 to do. We engaged in discussion with Mr. Posner, with Mr. Conrad, telling them we were concerned about the $100 fee and that there was nothing we could do to do it any quicker. We provided a very specific date-by-date sequence of events indicating that there was nothing in our power to fast forward the completeness of the project, from the window replacement to the framing that was required, all the way to the final inspection where basically the violation was closed. So we're asking for full reduction. We've done nothing wrong. We've done everything in our power to comply as soon as possible. I think the 60 days granted at first was probably too short. Had we known what the process would take, we would have asked for more. We did not know. It was the first time we're doing this. We've never had any violation on this house since we've owned it. It was a question of an ill-intentioned neighbor that indicated we had proceeded with a non-permitted replacement. The windows were 10, 15 years old. We had never done that. We bought it as is. So we're here asking for a full reduction because it's an additional financial burden on our family above and beyond the cost of the window replacement, which was completely unplanned for us.
What's the city's response?
We certainly don't dispute most of that. Most of the issue really comes down to inexperienced ownership from people that live, well, I was going to say out of state, but out of country. What they may not be aware of is the large volume of continued complaints we had, not since the hearing, but back before that. The windows was actually one of the few things that we could cite. We got complaints of short-term rentals, never found evidence of that. It was being rented. We cited for that. They got a rental license. I don't know. I don't know what the intentions of the neighbors were when they complained, whether it was ill-intentioned or not. All we can do is cite violations we find. More experienced, they might have asked for more time. I can't begin to answer that. That's for you to weigh. And of course, the fact that this was during COVID is something that has to be considered as well. They will not be the only ones that had contracting delays due to COVID.
I mean, the one element, thank you, Mr. Posner. The one element I want to add is we have email exchange with the city explaining our concern over this fine. I mean, we traveled from Canada. We got here yesterday because we were, given the clear impression that given the circumstances, given the sequence of events that we described, that we had really good chances of getting 100% lien reduction on this case. I hope the email exchanges are in our case. We have all proper licensing to rent this place. If neighbors, were concerned about noise, I think this has nothing to do with today's case. The case is about the windows, and like I said, there is clear evidence indicating that these windows in no way were replaced by ourselves.
It does in this sense. The equities and reduction of fine, one of the things the code says that I'm supposed to consider is previous cases or violations on the property. So in other words, what the city is asking me to do in this particular case is to consider, when I'm reducing it, how many times the city has had to come out and address issues on the property. So you're right, it's not directly related to the windows, it is directly related to the equity of me reducing the fine.
Magistrate, can I object to one part of that? Maybe there was some misunderstanding, but nobody in this office would ever have said you can expect to get this completely reduced. At most, we would have said it's likely to get substantially reduced. Our starting ask is a reduction of 70%. I would consider that substantial, and it's rare when the magistrate agrees with the city's amount anyway. So, but we would have never said that
I am
you
a
can expect to get this
freethinker, that is
completely
true.
reduced.
I don't believe we had any violations written up. We may have had a couple complaints, but there were no actual violations. We never had anything else, any cases or anything opened on our property.
Since we bought it in
Since we
April
purchased it.
2019.
Yeah.
Looks like there were 4 cases under their ownership. Rental license, which I already mentioned. The other 3 cases were complied. The overgrowth was a finding of fact, and then it was complied. That was some of the complaints we were getting back at the time. Then again, prohibited vehicle rental license also complied. This is the only one that went to hearing, and other than the finding of fact.
It doesn't look like it was totally without citation here, sir.
Sorry. Didn't recall this. We do have a property manager who does take care of it. Since we got those, I didn't know that those were typical kind of violations. They were just warnings. But since we did have some neighbors complaining about certain things, we hired a company or an individual to help us manage the property, take care of it. Even now that we've been doing work, we have landscapers coming regularly to make sure that it's clean, it's taken care of. This is a home that we also enjoy as a family, so we want to make sure that we preserve, its
I'm not going to reduce this to 0. However, I am favorable towards significantly reducing it, but you have to make me a more reasonable offer than 0.
$200.
I'll do the 200, but I want you guys have to be a little more active in making sure your property. I know you're not local, but you have to make sure that your property manager stays on top of this, that there aren't noise complaints coming out of your property.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Thank you,
We
Mr.
promise. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
30 days, 200.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Case number 5, 1401 Village Boulevard, 913 CE 17050272.
Case ending in 272, 1401 Village Boulevard, number 913. Date order 6/7 of 17, fine started 7/8 of 17, ran for 1,207 days, total is $120,700. $100 a day, date of compliance 10/27 of 20. Same owner, normal ask would have been 30% based on the size. The city's asking for 15%, 1.5. History is total of 2 cases under their ownership. Mitigation is they didn't get notice, but it was sent to not only was it sent to the correct PAPA address, that same mailing address still hasn't been changed with the county. So if they were to get cited today, they still wouldn't get the notice because it would again be sent to an incorrect PAPA address. City's asking for 15%, 1.5.
Good
Go ahead,
afternoon.
sir. Tell me what you're asking for and why I should grant it to you.
My name is Federico Mautone, Mautone. I'm the attorney for the property owner. We're asking for a reduction of the lien to $500. A little bit of an explanation of what happened. We were made aware of this fine and lien by in the process of selling another property owned by my client. We're still in the process of selling it because it's a bleeding lien and applies to all the properties. So that's why it came up in the title work. Immediately, when we find out about the fine, we contacted the city. They told us what the issue was. I talked to my client. He told me that he was aware something happened in 2017, but the issue was fixed right away. I guess he never knew that there was a fine because it was sent to an old address. And my client, he lives overseas. He has a property manager who takes care of these things. And I guess the property manager never followed up with the city to show that the work that was done and the violation corrected. Ever since we found out of this, I spoke with the inspector, explained that the work had been done. He asked for proof. He asked for a report showing that there was no mold in the property. We provided that right away. In the meantime, we were trying to figure out why we hadn't received the notice. And my client purchased the property in 2013. The following year, he changed addresses, and he does business through a Florida corporation. So when somebody does business through a Florida corporation and they think of changing their address, they go to the Florida's sunbiz.org, the Division of Corporations website. That's where you can see every Florida corporation has a mailing address, a principal address, and that's where they changed the address. They own, 30-something properties throughout Florida, and my client never thought of contacting each county specifically to change the address.
Your client's a sophisticated landowner and doesn't know to change the county registries?
That's a bit of an unfair statement. I deal with multiple clients that own properties in Florida, and when they think, and honestly, when I think of changing an address for a Florida entity, I usually think of the Florida Division of Corporations website, and not automatically think of the address that each county has or each municipality has. It's taken from the deed, and that's how these things happen. So
Well, there's something different between, you're right for a corporate entity, but the question isn't the corporate entity. The question is who owns real property, and that's held at the county level.
I totally understand. I also think that the city could have been more diligent in knowing that this is a Florida corporation and there's an address, publicly stated where mailing is supposed to be sent. They could have also done, that due diligence and mail the notice there, because my client, he was made aware of 2 violations. He took care of them right away. We've been in communication with the city from the beginning, and this really, truly is a case of miscommunication, misunderstanding. Obviously, we learned. I will double check with him as to why he hasn't changed the address already. But that's why we're asking for a reduction. We understand that we're taking the city's time being here, but we feel that it's unfair to pay, you know, dozens of thousands of dollars in something that was taken care of right away when he was made aware of the situation.
When was your client made aware of the issue?
When he was made aware,
Yes.
I believe it was about a year ago when we started the whole process. I mean, when we received the title work for the sale of the second property, right away I communicated with the inspector, Mr. McFarland, and I spoke. Immediately we started trying to remedy the situation, and the situation had been remedied in 2017 to the point that we didn't have to do any work in the property. We only had to show proof that the work had been done by providing a mold report showing that there was no mold. So I guess he was made aware of the issue back in 2017. He asked the property manager to take care of it. It was taken care of. Unfortunately, they didn't do the due diligence in following up, making sure that the fine was, that they didn't even get to the point of the fine. But he was very diligent when he found out to make sure that nothing further happened.
And the city is looking for how much here?
15%, 1.5. I understand his saying that, you know, he thinks it would be unfair, but what seems unconscionably unfair is the amount of work the city has to do because of absentee landlords living out of state for rental units. This was not even a rental license issue. This was a mold issue brought to us by the tenant because they didn't fix it on our own in the first place. And as representing the property owner, if he's not aware of Florida Statute 162 that says we're supposed to send it to where the county says the owner is, that's not on us. That's on them. And the fact that he's aware of it now, put in the application, this is what happened, and they still haven't changed it with the county. These are the ongoing problems the city has to deal with. Reducing this to $500 would be ridiculous.
I will say, sir, the equities don't necessarily favor your client here in the sense that the city basically had to go in because of a complaint from a tenant about a mold situation, which can be can be a threat to the health of the tenants. It's not as they would say, it's not they forgot to change the lock on a fence or something. This was mold in a tenant's facility that was considerately serious enough to be fined at.
I also don't believe that's the case. If the tenant had communicated that to my client could have fixed it. My client was never aware of it until the city told him that there was an issue. He's very on top of obviously we understand that mold is a serious issue, but it wasn't a matter of not taking care of the tenant's request and then the tenant having to complain to the city for help. If the tenant had communicated with my client, he would have taken care of it right away, and he did. The moment that he found out there was an issue, he addressed it right away. Unfortunately, I believe it's the property manager's fault. Property manager lies within my client's purview, so we understand that. But
let me ask the city, does the city have any other cases with this particular real estate owner, React Family, Inc.?
2 total cases on this property, 4 cases between their other 3 properties.
And what were the nature of those cases?
I don't have that in front of me. I don't think I even have the addresses of the other
I
properties.
have to weigh gravity.
Bring up 1802, The Point. Warrant any for that one. And 3526 Whitehall, number 303.
Well, in the last year, we were made aware of one violation, something about a rental license. And again, it was taken care of right away the moment that we were told that it was an issue.
Don't worry about it. This is what I'll do in this case. In CE 170502272, I'll reduce it to $5,000 payable within 60 days. with the understanding that A, your client gets his address updated in the record so that he gets proper notice, and understanding that in the city, it's important that he address these things as immediately as possible, okay?
Thank you.
Number 6, 715 Maddox Street, CE 11020918.
Good afternoon. Case ending in 918-715 Maddox Street. Date ordered 8/17 of 11. Fine started 8/30 of 11. Ran for 818 days. Total is $81,800. $100 a day. Date of compliance 11/25 of 13. This is a new owner. It's currently under contract for $340,000. City is asking standard 25%.
Sir, can you tell me your name and what you're asking me for and why I should grant it to you?
Yes, sir. My name is Michael Belston. I'm either asking for a dismissal or reduction in the amount of the lien. And as far as why, when I purchased this house, I was initially purchasing in 2013. It was delayed due to issues with the titles, is what we were told. The owners at that time apparently went to the court, got everything cleared. We closed in January of 2014. Title was clear. It had to be clear because I have a FHA mortgage. And I did a title search, no liens, no expired permits, nothing was coming up. Don't know how it happened. Magically, a few months later, it turns out everything came back on the title. I was not made aware of this till I was selling my house this year, in which case, just a few days before closing with my initial buyer, they were like, "Oh, you have 3 violations and 80 some odd $1,000 in fines." I said, "No, I don't." I never did anything except for put hurricane impact windows and doors, which was done through the government program. And they're like, "Oh no, this was from an owner 2 owners ago, back in 2010. And as you can imagine, I was quite shocked. So I immediately tried to reach out to the title company, was blown off by the title company, both me and my real estate agent were. To this day, we still not get a response from them. So I immediately hired someone who was a professional at this, because first-time homeowners, I didn't even know this was possible. I had all the the officers come out, they checked that nothing was done. These owners in 2010, to the best of my knowledge, basically abandoned the property. Nothing was ever done, no extensions were made. All the officers who came out were like, "Where's the stuff?" I said, "There isn't any. There's nothing here." They were done. We applied to Mr. Posner's department and everything to get on here so we can get this sold.
For the record, since it's the second time I heard it today, the name is Posner.
Oh, sorry, apologize.
I mispronounced his name as well, so.
That was the first one.
Sorry, English is actually not my native language, so I apologize. Basically, we did all the compliance. We got everything done before we even submitted the application. They said it could take 90 days. Mr. Posner's department bent over backwards to help me to get this done and be here today, so I'm eternally grateful. Officer Lester came out to my property, viewed everything was done. She's like, "Okay, just mow the yard." And I was like, "Yeah, it was raining last night before we could do it." Mowed it that day. Everything's gone. There's been no work done to this permits that were requested, which was an extension to an extension of the original house. And we're just asking so we can get this done so I can close and sell to a nice, wonderful gentleman and get on with my life.
Why is the city asking for, what, 25%
Just
here?
standard 25%. I mean, there's really nothing else to produce as far as our end of it goes. He's had 0 cases under his ownership, so his ownership has not been problematic for the city. His main issue really is the title company, because this was recorded in 2011. So why they didn't come up with it in 2014, that's on the title company. So unfortunately, he inherited the lien. The permit issues were just a matter of expired permits. It has nothing to do with the lien itself. But again, no history under his ownership.
Yeah, the problem is that while I accept everything you tell me is true, because it seems like you're earnest in the sense that these certainly weren't yours. The city has an interest in making sure that people can't get out of liens associated with code enforcement simply by transferring the home. And the city's not wrong in the sense that, that the problem seems to be here that your title company didn't address this when you purchased the property, which is, and I don't know why that would be, and that's between you, an attorney, and your title company.
Correct.
Now, I do value the equities here, which is that essentially, you know, these were not code issues that you created, nor does there seem to have been a code issue since you've owned the property. The city has offered to reduce it by 75%, which would come out to, if I'm doing my math here, $20,450, is that right?
Yes, sir.
Which I'm gonna guess is substantially more than you wanted to pay.
Substantially more than I can afford. Yes, sir.
And, you know, you've been sitting here watching at this point, you know that to the extent that the city has to invest resources in pursuing such things, I'm rarely inclined to reduce anything to zero where there is actual culpability. And in this particular case, the lien was properly attached to the property as far as that I can tell. So again, the issue I would say to you is I can't reduce it to zero, but I do recognize that this is a case where it should be reduced substantially. So you got to make me a better kind of offer than that.
No worries, sir. They just asked us why I said $500,000.
I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll reduce it to $1,500.
Okay.
Payable within 30 days.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Number 7, 627 39th Street, CE 18050672.
Case ending in 672, 627 39th Street, date ordered 8/1 of 18, fine started 8/31 of 18, ran for 971 days. Total is $145,650, $150 a day, date of compliance 4/28 of 21. This is the sort of same owner, it's the estate of the same owner, put it that way, the owner has passed. Under that ownership, there were 19 cases. Granted, there's only one lien, but we still had 19 cases under their ownership. So essentially, it was a city-managed property. The normal ask for such a situation is 50%. Based on the size of the lien, the city is asking for 25%.
What's the value of the property?
Right now, Papa shows $152,000.
All right, can you tell me your names and what you're asking me for and why I should grant it?
Yes, good evening, sir. My name is Gloria Oliver, and I'm asking for a reduction to 5%. To be honest, I am just devastated with all of this. I knew nothing about any of this, but by the help of my dear friend, Mr. Carlton, and his assistants, I was made aware of all of this. I had no idea about
This was your mother's home?
This was my aunt's home.
Your aunt's home.
Yes, that I was taking care of because she was very ill, and she was supposed to go back to her home, but end up staying with my home because she got very, very ill. I had no idea. I was just paying all of her taxes and insurance on her home to keep everything in order. Had no idea of any of this at all. Nothing.
Ma'am, are you the representative of the estate?
Yes, she is.
Yes, sir. Which I even wasn't
Who's
aware of
taking
either.
care of the property right now?
I have been taking care of the property for a year now, sir.
Special magistrate, just a note that there's a structure in the back of the property that is currently under the jurisdiction of the Nuisance Abatement Board. There was a...
So how are we even here today?
I'm sorry? I'm sorry.
Sorry, how are we even here today if there's a structure under code enforcement?
Well, it's under nuisance abatement. There was a my understanding there was a gentleman in there who was not supposed to be in there. But if the inspections came back that everything from a code inspection standpoint is in compliance, nothing prevents them from coming to lien reduction. There's other aspects of nuisance abatement that continue under the city's jurisdiction to watch
But
and
I
help
mean,
that
presumably
property.
they're abating code violations, right?
No, this is, nuisance abatement is not the same as chronic nuisance. Nuisance abatement is through the police department, has to do with any PD activity. It's also the first time my lawyer has advised me of this, so I was unaware. But based on what it says in city code, this actually wouldn't be a bar to a lien reduction.
Right, that
It
was.
says there can't be any code violations, and it's not city code when they're dealing with nuisance abatement.
But I think it goes to what you can weigh in terms of what's going on within the parameters of the property. That's all.
Agreed.
That's why I bring it up, that's all. Just being
So
transparent.
it's currently still being abated by the city police department?
In the sense that it's not one of the properties that's more, we have properties that are very seriously needing oversight by our PD to keep them in compliance from a nuisance standpoint. This is not a property that is as serious as we have seen. It is my understanding that there was a gentleman that was in the back unit, and I believe that there was a ejectment or eviction. Off the top of my head, I don't remember the exact status of that at this point. I think he was evicted. But what happens is the PD continues to watch over the property from a trespassing standpoint, and making sure that there are no further types of nuisance activity on the property. One of the nuisance activities can be code violations.
When's the last code violation we've had on this property?
Bring up the second case. No, hit okay. That was the most recent one. That'll have to do with the person that was evicted for basically an unsafe structure. They had no source of water, which state law prohibits anybody from residing in then. So the last case was a building case to have that guy evicted.
And when was that?
Last November.
And to the best of the city's knowledge, the property's been maintained within the requirements of the code since then?
Yes, sir. I mean, in the history of the 19 cases, there was a chronic nuisance case. It only lasted about a year, and then they were able to close that case. So it's no longer maintained as a chronic nuisance property. And again, the nuisance abatement is for police activity mostly.
There's a lot going on here, huh?
Right, so the nuisance that she's speaking of was taken care of in March. We had an attorney that had to come to a hearing with the city. The gentleman that she's speaking of, we filed an eviction back in October of 2020. It was executed this March. So literally from May of 2020 up until March, it was the time period that it took to get him out of here. Now, from May to October, I begged and pled with him to vacate the premises. He did not. He was very combative. As he spoke with the police operations, there was some prostitution and drugs, and he had incidents with neighbors drawing guns on them. So he was very combative. Nonetheless, most of those violations that Mr. Mitchell Posner spoke of was because of this guy. He just did not cooperate. So we were able to finally get him removed in March.
Is there anyone living on the property now?
Excuse me?
Is there anyone living at the property now?
No. The property's vacant, boarded up. We have the property now in full compliance. And it took a long time. And it took
What's your
time and
intention
effort.
with the property? Is your intention to sell it?
Yeah, so the intent is to sell it. So that's where we fix it up. And it took a while in time with COVID to get everything in compliance and dealing with the squatters, because it was not only him, there was literally maybe 4 or 5 other people living in that back building.
Yeah, I mean, part of the struggle for me on this particular case, if I'm being frank with you, is that there's quite a few, things that I'm supposed to weigh that sort of weigh against this property, and the reduction, including 19 previous cases, police nuisance, the fact that this was previously a chronic nuisance property. What it means is that the city has invested a significant amount of money and resources into trying to keep this property up. And they would be right to be displeased with me were I to suggest that I should reduce this so substantially that they've expended all these costs and none of that is recoverable against the property. You see my point?
I do understand that, but I mean, if you could see it from our standpoint, there was a lot of money and resources from the city, but also with this gentleman, it made it very difficult. It became a financial burden for Ms. Gloria to even try to upkeep this home and her personal home. So it was a financial burden. With her aunt passing, she basically inherited the property. So it was a problem that she inherited, and we came along and tried to fix things. So we do understand from the city standpoint.
The city's asking me for what, 25%?
Yes, sir.
Special Magistrate, can I make a note very quickly? Any costs or time and labor that the PD has put in on the nuisance abatement case, that gets assessed if needed in the nuisance abatement case.
Oh, fair enough.
I will say that once this nuisance abatement case came in front of our nuisance abatement board, they have not violated or been out of compliance from a nuisance abatement standpoint since then.
All right, and ma'am, what were you asking me for? I'm sorry, I didn't write it down.
5% we were asking for. Because of the sale, we had to run this property through a probate. There are 30 heirs, so we don't want to just wipe out the entire estate to fines. Now, we do understand we're trying to be fair, but 25%.
If I give you a substantial reduction on this property, you are going to maintain this property, you're going to keep it from being a nuisance of any kind to the city.
It's under contract, sir.
No nuisance. It took a lot of effort.
Is it under contract? Yeah. Okay.
The information we have is it's under contract for, I don't have the date, I'm sorry.
All right, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll reduce this to $10,000.
Okay.
I'll give you 60 days in case your closing takes a little bit longer.
Thank you.
Well, 60 days is enough? Yes?
Yeah, that's good.
Okay.
All right.
I just want to say you're extremely nice. This is my first time ever coming here. Like, oh my God, but yeah.
Thank you.
All right, good luck.
Thank you all.
Somebody make sure the camera's got that.
All right, two more. Number 8, 1803 North Congress Avenue, CE 16060283.
So you had to sit through everybody else, huh?
There's still one more.
Oh, there's one more too, huh?
Special Magistrate, we need the
they-
gentleman in the green shirt to be sworn in, please.
If you're going to talk, raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be truthful and accurate under penalty of perjury and the laws of the state of Florida? Go ahead.
Case ending in 283-1803 North Congress Avenue. Date ordered 7/20 of 16. Fine started 8/20 of 16. Ran for 1,670 days. Total $167,100 a day. Date of compliance 3/17 of 21. Currently under contract for $200,000. Mitigation is new owner and COVID issues, but they purchased it in August of 2019. They didn't comply until March of 21, so it certainly predated the COVID issues. This was for permit required for replacing a deck and doing roof work. Normally, it's a 25% ask based on the size. The city is asking for 15%, 1.5.
24,000-ish?
25,050.
I was close. It's mental math. All right, can you tell me your names, what you're asking me for, and why I should grant it to you?
Yes, Your Honor. My name is Jose Guifaro. I am the father of this young boy, Angelo Guifaro, and he's with me. Just I'm trying to teach what I do for a living. so he can later in life, he can take over. He just graduated from FSU, same with his twin brother, finance,
Yeah.
and his twin brother of political science and criminology. So the reason why we're here is we want to get a lien reduction on this fine. I bought this property in August 2019. I had a lot of issue with the HOA. I bought it in an auction. The HOA requests $66,000. I hired a lawyer. I finally got the HOA monthly fee that they were asking to $52,000. So I pay all of that. That was paid the beginning of this year. In the meantime, they were fixing the roof, which the code violation is because of the roof that it was falling, and I think some other issue like the wall wasn't pressure washed, and but they were the one who were responsible for this violation. So I bought the house, the apartment. I put it back on the market in January. I had a contract right away. The title company found out that there was this violation, so I got a hold of the city. The lady in there, Miss Monique, referred to me to Mr. Paul McFarland, who was the inspector at that time. So I got a hold of him. He went with me to the property, and he saw the property that was already in compliance. I've been doing the right thing right after that, and that's I am here just to see if I can get a lien reduction on that fine.
So what are you asking me for, sir?
Any fair amount. I've been having really hard time with my boys graduating on April. I was pretty much out of work. All the COVID pandemic. I try to take care of my family. This is what I do for a living. I got another boy who is going in Palm Beach State. My wife works at the school district. So we're a family-based foundation. I'm trying to be fair on this, and $1,000, I think whatever is fair.
So the city has offered 25. What's the code violation occurred prior to ownership, but existed through the ownership, I guess is what the city's telling me?
Yes, sir. I believe you said you purchased this at auction?
Yeah, in Palm Beach auction in 2019 on August.
So they didn't do their homework, which is probably how they wound up with the HOA assessment and a city lien.
What's the history of code violations under this owner?
0 cases since they purchased it. Of course, the issues that existed were already cited and running fines, so we wouldn't have cited it again. Especially when you're talking about a corner unit on one of these quad buildings.
Why did it take so long for this to come into compliance? Why did the roof need to be, I guess the city's saying it was 2021 and you bought in 2019. Why did it take so long?
Well, it's because I was dealing with the HOA. The HOA, they had lien against the property for $66,000. The previous owner didn't pay the monthly fee, and since August 19, I've been paying $525 every month to the HOA. But the HOA is actually not from Florida. They are based in California. So they are just taking the money away from us and doing nothing. But it is another issue with them. So.
And what is your intention to sell this property? Is that what's happening, sir?
Yeah, this is what I do for a living. I buy what I can with my own funds to support these kids, my family. And as soon as I get this property free and clear, I can put it back on the market because I had a contract, but the contract is already declined because they couldn't wait so long.
I don't give advice here, but I think especially when you're buying something at auction, it's important to do a title search to make sure that these issues with the HOA and the city don't pop up on you. I mean, I won't tell you your business, but as a magistrate, you know, one of the things I'm supposed to consider is, did you have notice that this was something that you were, you know, taking on when you bought the property? And presumably, since this was public record, right, you know, you should have had some notice that there was a city lien on this property. And you know, if you're going to stay in this particular kind of business, sir, it's important that you recognize those things because they can really affect the value of your property.
Yeah.
What I will do in this case, I will give you my. I'm going to reduce this to $5,000 payable within 60 days, but you have to be careful on these because these are substantial amounts of money. And you know, I'm doing this primarily because the city is telling me that there aren't cases under your company's name, and I do appreciate people that repair property and put it back on the market, which is important in the city. But do keep in mind that, you know, should this occur again, you know, whichever magistrate, they're going to look at this and say, well, how did you not know this time when you bought the property? So you have to take these things into consideration, okay?
I do appreciate the advice, Your Honor. Thank you.
Property order.
Thank you.
We got one more, right?
Yep, number 9236 Lakeland Drive, CE 17070006.
Posner? Yeah, I got it right that time.
I'm sorry? You
Got your
did,
name
yes.
right that time.
Yes, you did. And everyone that said it after I made that comment got it right too. Did you notice that?
Funny
Okay,
how that
case
works.
ending in 006-236 Lakeland, date ordered 8/16 of 17, fine started 9/16 of 17. Ran for 58 days, total is $5,800, $100 a day. Date of compliance 11/13 of 17. Okay, the crux of this debate is actually going to be whether or not it's the same owner. The city believes it is and is asking for 50%. Sorry. Okay, so supporting documents. The current owner is Carbog Global Business LLC, managed by JMLJ Corporation. Sorry, next Sunbiz listing, JMLJ Corporation, President Juan Manuel Lopez, highlighted below. Following that is Rayo, I don't know if I'm pronouncing these right, Rayo AJ LLC, manager Juan Manuel Lopez, and also Camila Lopez as a manager and the registered agent. Those are relevant because of the property history under the ownership on Rayo AJ LLC, which caused the lien, and the current owner, Carbog Global LLC. The other three documents are the lien reduction application form, contact name Juan Manuel Lopez, and Camilo again. Camila Lopez put her name as the applicant for the designated agent form in that application. The next document is a rental tax application for September of 2019. This is still Carbog LLC. Applicant is Manuel Lopez for Carbog LLC. They provided the Carbog Articles of Organization at the time, which also says signature of member, authorized representative, Juan Manuel Lopez. And here's the rental application for Rayo AJ LLC, who owned it back when this lien started. Property owner information, name given, Camilo Lopez. Again, these are the same people throughout the history, transferring LLCs. We deal with this all the time. Saying this is a new owner and therefore they're not responsible is their only mitigating circumstances is why we're going through all this. The last document is the acknowledgement of landlord property owner for back in 2014. Again, Rayo AJ LLC, signed by Camilo Lopez. They're the same people.
If I may? Go ahead, sir. Tell me
Good
your
morning.
name.
I actually spoke very briefly to Mr. Posner, who was very helpful. I'm the attorney for
Posner?
the current owner. Okay,
Sir,
so,
could you state your name, though?
oh, sure. I'm very sorry. Manuel Crespo, C-R-E-S-P-O. So, without getting into all the intricacies of how this transaction was handled, because what happened is this is in fact a new owner, but the old owners financed not only, or they sold the real estate, but they ended up financing on the back end some of the corporate interests. And as part of that agreement, what happened was is that they insisted on remaining listed so that they had some control of the company, which I know does not make a difference to this body. It is the way they wanted to structure the transaction. It is the way that it was contracted before I ever got involved. I personally think it was ill-advised, but that's neither here nor there. So the absentee owners, and this is another one of those situations, entered into this contract. It was an as-is, sight unseen, no lien letter searches, none of that stuff, which is normally done, okay? It was after they were stuck in the contract that when we did the work, I realized, hey guys, there's issues here, and we're gonna have to deal with them, okay? But by then, they were in on the deposit, et cetera, so they didn't want to lose their hard money, which was already non-refundable. So, not intending to engage in a pity party here, but there's a lot more to the way this property was purchased and innocent bystanders than meets the eye. Okay, so for those reasons, okay, and I believe that Mr. Posner advised the amount was
Posner?
$5,600, and I'm sorry, Posner?
Posner.
I'm very sorry, sir. Posner advised that the city was requesting 50%. I don't believe that, frankly, to be unreasonable. I would just simply ask for a little bit more consideration from the magistrate and perhaps consider a 30% amount, which I've also heard the city request on other matters that have come before this body, and that's basically it. This is my first time here, so this is not what I do, so I appreciate any consideration that the magistrate can give to the current owner. Thank you.
What is 50% here?
2,900.
2,900, is that right?
Yes, sir.
All right, I'll reduce it to 2,500 payable within 30 days.
Is that 30 days, Mr. Magistrate?
30 days, unless you need more. I can give you more if you need.
That should be fine. That should be fine. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Posner.
I think that's it, right?
Isn't that enough?
Boy, it sure seems like it today, doesn't it? All right, seeing no further business before us, this meeting is hereby adjourned.